I will explain everything you need to know about various offset hooks. Right from the start, I will say this that offset hook also is known as weedless hook or EWG hook, but in general that's exactly the same thing. This is a hook which has the shape which looks something like that. So during this video I will explain all the different shapes or how the wire is being bent for those hooks, what lures to use with them, how to use them, and so on. So it will be a very good one and also very useful one. Please make sure you stick around. I will kick it off by explaining what size hook or offset hook to choose for a given lure. And the rule is very simple one. Basically, for a given lure, you want to grab a hook which is more or less half of the length of the lure. So for example, this lure is about 6 centimeters in length, and hook which is about 3 centimeters in length should be more or less perfect. But again, not only the length is important when we are talking about offset hooks. The gape size of the hook is also very important, and you have to take it into account when you are grabbing the lure. So for example, when we are talking about minnow type or shad type lures, then you will need to use wide gape offset hooks like this one or this one, but not something like that which has a narrow gape. So for example, these two hooks are more or less the same length, and this lure would not work that well on with this hook, but it would work very well with a worm type lure, which actually is maybe even a little bit longer. So I will put this lure onto the hook, and also whilst doing that I will explain how to put a lure onto the offset hook. So basically you want to grab the lure and bottom lip hook it just like that slightly, and then you slide the lure by the eye, and then you more or less measure where the hook should leave and put the hook through just like that. But again, it's very important to notice that now when the fish will grab the lure, it won't have much kinda gape that hook to hook the fish, and this is a problem what I see anglers do every single time. They are using narrow gape hooks with a shad type lures and then losing fish, because basically the lure will not allow or won't slide too far, to keep the fish onto the hook. And now if I will grab this even bigger worm lure, which is maybe not bigger but it's longer, if I will put this lure onto the hook, you will see that I will have more room for the hook to hook the fish. See? And also worm being worm, it's more flexible, so it will go out of the way more and you will have just more room. That's very important. So now I will grab the same shad lure and put it onto the hook, which has slightly wider gape, and you will see that hooking properties will be much better. See? All that room for the lure to slide. and the gape is much bigger. Okay, to sum up, for the shad type or minnow type soft lures, you want to be using wide gape offset hooks, and for the worm type lures, you want to be using narrow gape offset hooks. That's very important. Also, it's very important to have as much or as little resistance or as much movement on the lure here, because you want really to conceal your point, but then, or hook's point, but then when the fish will grab, you want to be sure, that the lure will slide easily. And to achieve that, you want to be using thin wired offset hooks, and also you want to kind of put a little bit of saliva here just before casting out. Not every time, just when you are kind of putting a new lure on, you want to put a little bit of saliva here, and then just give, I don't know, 10-15 times of this movement, just to make sure that some saliva will go into the rubber, where the rubber is touching the metal, and then you will see that it will start to slide much easier. So that's very important, guys. Also, some people will say you that you have to nick a little bit of the lure's silicone onto the hook's point, just to make sure that it won't hook any kind of snags, weed, and so on. Even though that's kind of true, but I never do that, because for me fishing is always difficult, and I very rarely get aggressive takes. For me it's always, the bites are very gentle, supple, and so on. Therefore I never do that. But what I do, I always make sure that my lure is as close to the hook's point, basically just sticking out just a little bit, just like that. And then obviously when the fish will just grab the lure, it will hook the fish, and then the lure will slide down, and hopefully the fish will stay on. So, but again, you can try that little hooking if you want, but it's on you, guys. You will be losing more fish, that's for sure. Yes, you will be snagging less as well, like snagging less weed and snagging onto some like hard structure on the bottom, like stones and stumps, but you will be losing and missing more bites. That's 100%. So basically just make sure that, I would advise, make sure that that the gap in here is almost non-existent as here, but with the slightest push the hook will go out and hook the fish for you. Also, some lures will have like a little groove like this one, and that's perfect in my book, where you can just conceal the hook, but still the hook's point is kind of not obstructed by the silicone itself. It just needs a little bit of push and it goes out. So that's ideal in my book. Also, when it comes to the offset hook shape, my favorite by far is this one. See that bit of wire from here to here? It's almost like vertical to the lure's kind of sliding path. So in here, so the lure would have to go kind of backwards if you like, when it will be sliding. But on this one it will just go nicely down. And with these hooks, where the wire is bent just like that, I noticed that quite often it's like hooked or bites to hooked and landed fish ratio is 100%. With these ones you will lose more fish, but where the hook shape is like that, this bit exactly, I mean, where it's like going at right angle to the lure, then it's very good when it comes to hooking the fish. Another great tip when using offset hooks is this one. So sometimes when the fish will grab your lure, it still won't get hooked. Most likely because it will grab tail or side, And in these situations, fish will be pulling your lure down from the hook or away from the hook, and the lure will be holding just in two positions. And in these cases, most likely fish will steal the lure or just will destroy the lure, or just will the lure will end up, kind of messed up, and you won't get another bite on that same cast. And to combat this, you can use one of them little silicone beads. Basically what you do is this. So I will lip hook my lure, then I will thread this little bead on. And then this bead will prevent for the lure for coming off or from coming off. Almost there. You want to have that little bead just right by the lure, just like that, even though it's clear, but I hope you can see it a little bit. So, and then you just finish up your rig. Beautiful. So as you can see now, that little bead will prevent for the lure to go from the hook or leave the hook. This little part will still be moving, and that's great, but the lure will be fixed here by the eye onto that bend here, and that's perfect, This little tip will save you lots and lots of lures from being destroyed, especially when there will be like, those small aggressive perch around. Try it out, you will love it. And also I will leave a link for these beads. Basically those beads are the same ones which carp guys do use to secure their boilies in some specific rigs, and also those beads are the same ones, I believe, which are used for earrings to kind of fasten the earring. Some of those hooks will have beaked point, some of them will have straight point. Again, it depends on your taste when it comes to lure fishing. I prefer to use straight point offset hooks. I believe they hook the fish that a little bit easier, and also they are easier to keep them sharp. I mean, when they get blunt, then you grab some file and it's easier to sharpen them. But again, those beaked ones or the beaked point, they do not get blunt as easy. But still, my preferred option for lure fishing are straight point offset hooks. Also, it's very important to mention that hook's angle compared to this little area might be different. For example, as you can see on this hook, it's in line. It's like from the hook's point, we are going in straight line in here. And in here, different. It has some angle. Again, it depends on the lures, which ones you will use. These wider gape, like this one, often will have the hook's point, which is going in one line, and those narrower ones often will have a little bit of an kind of an angle, which is going not exactly. I will try to actually use the line like roughly. For example, here, see it's not going in one line. It has some angle, and here it's going in one line. Again, it might have a little kind of impact on the hooking properties, but it's more to do with the lure. So basically with these ones you can kind of hook the lure a little bit differently to have similar properties as these ones. But again, narrow gape hooks will always work better for worm type lures, and wide gape hooks will always work better for shad or minnow type lures. And you don't need to use wide gape hook when using worm type lures, because then you would have too much of that kind of wire sticking out from thin lure, and you just don't need that. Now, very quickly, when to use offset hooks. Basically, you want to be using offset hooks when you want to keep your presentation good, but you have some kind of a structure or some weeds or branches, something on the bottom or in mid-water, which will kind of ruin your presentation, or they just will snag you and you won't have a good day when it comes to fishing and catching fish. You will be pulling something out of the water, not fish, all day long, or losing your tackle. So basically, then those offset hooks should be used. Also, one more situation when offset hooks will shine is when you will have plenty of inactive fish. For example, during the winter, during the floods or something, when lots and lots of fish will gather, maybe not even like predatory fish, but like prey fish, and you might end up kind of fall hooking or snagging the fish. But if you will be using offset hooks, this situation won't be a problem. But again, not that often you will be in this situation, but it might help. To sum up, you want to be using offset hooks when you want to avoid some snags or weed. Also, offset hooks will allow you to balance out your lure on these rigs, which kinda are free, if you like, or where the weight in the rig is not kinda correcting the orientation of the hook, if you like. So what I mean, basically, I will grab this hook and thread this lure onto that hook to show you what I mean. So, and let's assume that now this little lure with the hook we have on a paternoster rig, where the weight is, I don't know, half a meter away from the lure. And it means that the lure will be, working on its own. And then, as the heaviest part of this lure will be below it, where the hook's shank is, then it means that this lure will be standing just like that. So it will be falling like that as well, because that's the heaviest part. So the hook or offset hook will allow you to balance out your lure. That's also very, very important. If you would have like a straight shank hook, then the lure would fall kind of opposite way. The hook's point would go first, but with the offset hook, it's good, because as I say, the heaviest part is underneath the lure and it will be falling just like that. It works well with a Cheb rig, Texas rigs, Carolina rigs, free rigs, whatever you use. So yeah, a little piece of extra information. But it's all bit from me for today. I hope you'll find this video useful. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.